Okay, so the current book that we've been reading is Bless Me Ultima, which is right here by Rodolfo Anaya, I'm sorry. And he's an author from New Mexico, and he grew up there. And so some of this book is autobiographical, and so he says that so a lot of the landscapes and stuff like that are where he actually grew up. So it's I think it's a really good book. I really like the book, and I also want to thank you guys who have been participating with readings and artwork. You guys have done a really good job. I know that some of you are really gifted writers, and you're willing to share today. I know Anthony's willing to share today, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And I know there's a couple of others that have done some really great writings, but don't necessarily want to share. So I respect that, so don't worry about that. So we'll go ahead and start from the beginning here. So Bless Me Ultima. So Ultima, the main character, or one of the main characters, is Ultima, and she is what we would call a curandera. So she heals people with herbs and spells and stuff like that. She's really not curandera is not necessarily a witch, but some people might mistake that name with being a witch. So there is a difference, and it's hard to find that difference because it dabbles in spells, it dabbles in herbs, it dabbles in medicine, it dabbles in healing. So it's kind of like a vast idea in this book. So the setting is New Mexico around 1944 and during World War II. And Antonio's brothers returned from the war, and they're restless. They're restless young men who have gone off to fight. They fought the Germans, and now they're back home on the Llano, which is the kind of like the rolling plains of New Mexico, and they're bored out of their skulls because they just came back from Europe and fighting the Nazis and stuff like that. So now they're back in New Mexico, which is a vast it's a contrast. It's a total different perspective on the world. So the second part is conflict resolution in the book, and it's family against other families, or families against other families. And it's really fascinating because if you guys remember from the movie and some of the readings, Antonio every day has to walk to school or run to school. If you're going into town, you got to get in a pickup truck. It's just this vast miles and miles of kind of empty space. So what I'm getting at is when it comes to conflict resolution is that you can't just call the sheriff and say, hey, so-and-so's got a rifle and they're killing my cattle, or they're taking pot shots at my kids. So a lot of times, a lot of conflicts at those times in New Mexico and other places as well was settled by individuals, was settled maybe by the head of the family, maybe a grandfather, or maybe the eldest son might go and try to do justice or vengeance on an enemy. And so it's very different. You're not waiting for the sheriffs, you're not calling 911, you know what I mean? You're not waiting for the Alhambra PD to come down and help you out. It's just not going to happen. So a lot of conflicts were solved by family stuff. And the other big part of the book, and I think it's the biggest part of the book, is this idea of opposites or contrast. There's a lot of opposites going on in the book. And I'll start with the first one, just with Antonio's family. Antonio's family, his mother's side are the Lunas. And there are, and Luna means moon in English. And usually the Lunas are, in this particular book, the Lunas are the people that tend the earth. They're the farmers. They go by the lunar calendar. They know when the seasons are changing. They know when to plant different crops. And it's very important in this society, because if you don't plant your crops at the right time, you may not have any may not have any food to eat. You know what I mean? And then then there's drought. Then you're in New Mexico. So it's like, if there's not a river nearby, you're not getting any water. So you can't grow food. So it's a very important job. And that's his mother's side. And the other side are the Mares. And the Mares is the ocean. And usually when we think of the ocean, we think of a boat, kind of being tossed back and forth in the waves. It's unsettled. His brothers are definitely Mares. They come back from the war. They're really unsettled by what happened in war. They're probably suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a lot of restlessness going on. So they can be seen as more Mares than Lunas. And I think the tempering piece is that the father is a Mares. But because of the love of Antonio's mother, he can settle for the farm. He can stay on the farm with his wife and his kids. So he's able to adapt the way of the Lunas, to tend the soil, to become a farmer, for it to become kind of like a way of sustaining the family. Okay, and let's see. There is, and another big piece is religion. Okay, so in the book, you have the idea of, it's almost right out of the first or second chapter. You have the idea of them going to church, and remember, the book is seen through Antonio's eyes as a young boy, so he hasn't even reached adolescence yet. So this stuff is very important to him. Does God love him? Is he forgiven for his sins? Is he able to be? Is he going to go to heaven? Are the saints watching over him? All of these things are very real to him and his friends and his family. And the other piece, so you have this whole church piece going on with the priest and the nuns. I don't know if you remember that those parts of the books, or even the punishments, where if you're late to church, you have to pray on your knees and hold Bibles up in each hand. It's kind of you wouldn't see that today. That would be considered kind of child abuse. You know what I mean? But back in the day, wacky stuff like that happened all the time. So here you have the father, the priest, this order. They're learning their prayers. Our Father who art in heaven, the Hail Mary, right? All of this matters in the church. And then on the other side, you have Ultima, who comes and lives with the family. So she's a curandera. She believes in spirituality. She believes in the spirit world, and not necessarily this spirit world, a completely different spirit world, and which is a very strong Spanish tradition coming to New Mexico. This comes from the Spaniards, but also they encounter a Native American spirituality too, which is very similar to the Spanish spirituality, but not necessarily the Catholic spirituality. It's a totally different realm. So Antonio is going to receive Holy Communion, First Communion. That's when he partakes of the body of Jesus, right? Where on the other side with Ultima, it's about herbal remedies. It's about being healed if there's a sickness. And it's really interesting because we saw it in the movie, where families kind of shun Ultima because she's a curandera, or they might consider her a witch. But as soon as someone in the family gets sick, who do they call? They call Ultima. Hey, I need your help. I have so much money to give you. You know what I mean? So she's a reliable source of healing, but she's definitely off the beaten track. So we have all this contrast going on. In the church, you have the saints. You might have Saint Anthony. You might have Saint Francis. You have all these different saints who have Saint Francis was really big with animals. He was kind of like the Dr. Dolittle of the Catholic Church. And but Ultima has her animal. She has an owl. She has an owl who's her companion and was given to her as a gift and became her pet, but it became bigger than that. So there's all this going on. And then there's, so what I want to do right now is I want to read one of the excerpts that Anthony made, that Anthony submitted, and it has to do with the idea of being a Luna versus being a Maris. So let me find it real quick here. And thank you, Anthony, for letting me read this. Okay. So the journal prompt was, Bless Me Ultima is full of opposites and contrast, calmness versus rowdiness, the spirit world versus the church, darkness versus light. How do opposites play out in your life? So Anthony's response was, I would say opposites are a big part of my life. For example, I am calm, whilst my brother is rowdy. We are opposites. Furthermore, I can say with full confidence that opposites don't attract. My brother and I rarely get along because of our conflicting personalities. There is a parallel between us and the Lunas and Madas. In that sense, being opposites is a negative thing. Whilst I know not all opposites are bad, I cannot point to a positive that I've had with opposites in my life. Okay, so this is very good. So Anthony recognizes that in his own family there's the Lunas, the people that are calm, or the Madas, the people that are rowdy or restless. And I think both of these can be inside of us, and that's okay. It's not good or bad. It's just what it is. Leilani wrote, and I'm not going to read it verbatim because she's not here, but she wrote that she has this. All around her is the Madas. All around her is this restless ocean, and she never has been able to find a place for her to feel settled or to feel calm. So I thought, wow, that's a fascinating insight into who she is, because, and I just told her, I go, hey, maybe someday you'll find it, and then maybe someday she'll never find it, but at least she knows. You know what I mean? She knows that maybe she can find it, and maybe she's okay with, the restlessness, or, But I know, like for me, I like having a calm place. I like being more of like a Luna, because it just feels better. I don't know, when I'm calm, I tend to be happier, I think. So now I want to go on to the culture in New Mexico, and I want to go over this really quickly because I think it's a part of the book, but I think it's something that maybe I picked up on, and maybe you guys picked up on too. But culture in New Mexico is very different, and I want to use culture in New Mexico versus culture in Mexico, and specifically Mexico City. Okay, so when you go to New Mexico, and I've been to New Mexico several times, there are people that are of Spanish descent, literally Spanish descent. They will not call themselves Mexican, they call themselves New Mexican. And they don't relate to Mexican culture per se, but there are a lot of similarities. I mean, it's amazing. It's just, I think it really comes down to a label and where they've been, where their culture has thrived. So in New Mexico, you have Spanish people of Spanish descent. You have Native Americans, who are the Pueblo Indians, who live in adobe buildings like Taos Pueblo, Acoma Pueblo, and then you have other European people, European descent, or other white people like Italians, Irish. And so in New Mexico, these cultures did not mix in big swaths of areas. They're just separated out. They're separated out. I think maybe in Albuquerque, which is the really big city in New Mexico, maybe there's more of a blending, but it didn't. But you still see the separatedness. and you see it in the artwork as well, or in, like, say, religious phenomena. So for example, in New Mexico, if you go to the churches and you go to see like Our Lady of Guadalupe in New Mexico, in the Spanish churches, you see the lady who's Jesus's mom, but she's usually in blue. She's like in a, do I have the wrong one? I think I have the wrong one. I am so sorry. Let me get the right one. Here it is. So she's in blue. She's in a blue tilma with the stars, and she usually has a lighter complexion. But this is actually Our Lady of Guadalupe. And a lot of people don't understand, but Our Lady of Guadalupe, the original Our Lady of Guadalupe, is from Spain. And so if you look at like the whole Mediterranean area, this particular virgin is very like Byzantium. So she's Eastern European. So the artwork, religious artwork, just came across the Mediterranean into Spain and into Italy, and you have these, they're just like prominent, and so they end up in the New World. They end up in New Mexico. They're in New Mexico. So if you see a Virgin of Guadalupe, she's going to have blue, and she's going to have a very European-looking face. Okay, and the colors are going to be different, but the same thing. The sun's behind her. She's carried by an angel. The moon is right here. The clouds. You know, it's all the similar artwork. And so once you get into, now if you go to Taos Pueblo or other places like that, you're going to have this sort of lady on the altar. And she is not Jesus's mom at all. She's the corn goddess, right? And the corn goddess, she takes different forms in different cultures. So for example, at the Taos Pueblo, she's gonna look like this. At Acoma Pueblo, she's gonna look a little different. But it's corn husk. She's made of corn husk. And so she's definitely a goddess of fertility, a goddess of the land, a goddess of food. And so what happens, so this is New Mexico, right? But in Mexico City, you have this mixture, or this explosive mixture of both in one lady. This is Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico. And now there's an evolution that's happened. This is more of a greenish tint. Here it might look blue, but that's my bad. Her face is brown. Okay, can you guys? I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you guys see that? Okay, so she's definitely Indian. She's definitely Native American now, and she speaks in Nahuatl, which is the language of the Mexica, or the Aztecs, or several other tribes in Mexico City. So now she's become the corn goddess and Jesus's mother, all in one. And it's really interesting because her basilica in Mexico City is built with the stones that housed the temple of Tonantzin, and Tonantzin was the Aztec goddess of corn. So anyway, so I just wanted to share this, how in Mexico it's all blended together, just like us. We're all blended. I know I did a DNA test and I'm 60% like Mexican Indian, 20% Spanish, and 10% Sardinian or Italian, which I don't know where that came from. But anyways, it's like we're all mixed up. I'm looking at you guys and I can tell that everybody's mixed up. So I found that very interesting, and I think that's a part of what happens in the culture of New Mexico as well. And there's all these kind of like, it's very separated out. And then the last one I want to show is a painting that Brienne did. So Brienne likes to express herself in art, especially in painting and doing sculpting with clay and stuff like that. So she kind of captured the essence of Bless Me Ultima, I think, in the sense that you have the earth, and it's blue, and it's cloudy, and it's green, and then there's this dark sky, and then there's the moon, which is symbolic of the Luna family, and then you have the ocean, which is symbolic of the mares, and then you have Ultima here in the where she's buried under a juniper tree, and so that's symbolic of Mother Earth. So you have Mother Earth, and then you have, you have the spirit realm. I don't know. It's a very fascinating painting. I think she captured a lot of what Bless Me Ultima is about. So do any of you guys have any questions about anything, or about what you've been reading so far? In terms of like the responses, it seems like you guys really like this book. Would you say that you like this book? Yeah, okay, cool. So anybody have anything else? Okay, so that's it, guys. So thank you for listening. All right, great.